Hello, it's Amy. I'm back again reading from the Journal of Emily Shore, where we left off a few days ago. We were in the year August 1838, and so that's where we're picking up again today on page 271 of the 1891 edition, with the entry for August 22nd, which was a Wednesday. Mackworth mentioned an odd circumstance about a wasp, which he was going to kill by smashing it under a little pen tray. The wasp, seeing itself confined only by the leg, which was squeezed between the window and the tray, proceeded to set itself at liberty by biting its leg off. And that was all she wrote on the 22nd of August. August 24th, Friday. The inscription which I have written, i.e. am going to write, on the other side of the page, was composed by Mr. Macaulay for poor Benjamin's monument. And we have a note here. She says, and an admirable inscription it is. Inscription on a tablet erected in the Cathedral, Calcutta. This monument is sacred to the memory of Sir Benjamin Heath Malkin, K.N.T., one of the judges of the Supreme Court of Judicature, a man eminently distinguished by his literary and scientific attainments, by his professional learning and ability, by the clearness and accuracy of his intellect, by diligence, by patience, by firmness, by love of truth, by public spirit, ardent and disinterested, yet always under the guidance of discretion, by rigid uprightness, by unostentatious piety, by the serenity of his temper, and by the benevolence of his heart. Died October 21st, 1837. There is not a word in it which is not strictly true, as Papa says, and there is not a single quality mentioned for which he was not eminently distinguished above perhaps any other being I know, and it is difficult to say which of them shone forth most, and was most obvious to sight, unless perhaps his most unruffled temper. August 27th, Monday. The Duckworths called for Mamma and me at 2 o'clock with 2 carriages to take us with them to see Embley, a gentleman's place near Romsey. The party consisted of 10 people. Embley belongs to Mr. Nightingale. The great beauty of the place consists in the approach to the house, a drive of 3 miles, through most beautiful deep shrubberies and plantations. Part of the way the road is bordered by splendid rhododendrons. There are rich, extensive peeps of the distant forest through breaks in the foliage. The ground is rich with ferns and heath, and under the woods with ivy. The house is an old brick building in the Elizabethan style, now undergoing repair. There are some formal gardens with a very long gravel walk, which Mr. Duckworth says is so like the style of Louis XIV that one always imagines people with hoops walking in it. August 31st, Friday. My chronological tables and French history were my chief occupation. I am quite passionately fond of history. I believe I could almost devote myself to it, to the exclusion of nearly every other study. I have already acquired a great huge mass of it, and every day adds a substantial portion. I read the life of Sobieski. I must remember the battle of Chosin, fought 1673. Papa and Mamma dined with the Duckworths, and we were left to drink tea by ourselves. We had a very merry evening, notwithstanding the absence of Mamma, who is to me quite a sunshine. I am generally altogether dull and gloomy without her. She is not yet home. What a brilliant, bright moon is before me, as fixed as if it grew in its own cloudless, starless lake of blue. So now we quite bid adieu to all that looks like summer. Oh, what a sweet, serene farewell. The evening is so calm that I believe I could almost hear the rose leaves falling. September 2nd, Sunday. I read Jeremy Taylor's second sermon on the flesh and the spirit. I think he here, as is not uncommon, states rather unfairly the anxiety of men to acquire gold, which he represents as for its own sake entirely, whereas he should not have overlooked the fact that gold is valuable and coveted, not for itself, but for the very great advantages to be gained by it, influence, power, rank, the gratification of luxury, the means of benefiting ourselves and others, etc. Now, it is all these things, not the mere word gold, which he should, in fairness, have put as the counterpoise to the benefits of religion. But altogether the sermon is very admirable and eloquent. September 8th, Saturday. I am exulting over the completion of 2 charts of chronology, the one which I mentioned yesterday of 2 pasteboard sheets. I have revised, glued and nailed to the wall of my room. The other of Este, Savoy, and Brandenburg on 1 sheet. I finished this evening, but have not nailed up. I have been working at it most indefatigably and laboriously, spite of weakness and fatigue. I spent 9 hours today on these tables, being resolved to finish them, which was not done till after 10 at night. I did nothing else all day except a little of the Greek Revolution at odd times, and 2 odd pages of the Life of Washington. Some of our party again drank tea with the delightful Duckworths. Nothing can exceed their kindness to us, especially to me as an invalid. I wish you could find something for us to do for you, said Mr. Duckworth on going away. And this feeling seems to be the key to everything he does. I am sure Christian benevolence is a family quality. We never meet the Duckworths without having sensible and interesting conversation. We have few acquaintance here of whom we can say the same. They are every way suited to us, and the most fortunate we are in having such valuable friends. September 11th, Tuesday. Mrs. Duckworth called for me in the carriage at 3 o'clock, and I had a delightful drive. It was the very perfection of an autumn day, calm, cloudless, hot, yet with a cool clearness in the air. We halted on a very elevated spot before a pond or tarn. Cattle were grazing round it or standing still in it, reflected in the quiet water. On the farther bank were a herd of deer just on the brow of the hill, with the blue country beyond. The whole formed a scene of delicious repose. It seemed as if nature held her breath. And then in brackets an editor's note. On September 12th, the invalid went with her mother to spend a fortnight at Southsea. September 16, Sunday. Oh, how beautiful was the scene! The water like a pure glassy mirror, the ships distinctly reflected, their long masts tapering to an infinite length. Then came the Ryde steamer, polluting the pure air with its abominable tail of smoke, and disturbing the stillness with the thumping of its paddles, like a shopkeeper's apprentice trampling along and smoking his pipe. In Watt's World to Come, I lighted on a notable piece of blundering in the answer to an objection against the existence of a separate state. How comes death to be so often called in Scripture a sleep, if the soul wakes all the while? To which Watts replied, why is the repose of man every night called sleep, since the soul wakes, as appears by 1,000 dreams? As if the word sleep had a meaning independent of the repose of man, as if it ever meant anything before it meant that repose. Why, sleep is an arbitrary term, not applied to the repose that any peculiar significancy or applicableness. The word was created for the thing, it did not exist first, and death, when called sleep, is compared to the thing and not the word. The proper answer should have been that this circumstance about the soul is only another circumstance of analogy between death and sleep, or something of that kind. And I think we're going to leave it at that for today's reading, because next we have, in brackets, a visit to the Britannia frigate at Portsmouth. So when we return for the next reading, we will begin with the entry for September the 17th of 1838. On page 275.